Hi, everyone. So it's 2026, and I want to talk about this year going forward, especially when it comes to the county, of course. And one of the key things to talk about is trust. You see, truth is, well, a lot of people don't trust government, and especially don't trust local government. But what is trust? Let me read this to you. Trust, to believe that a person is good and honest and will not harm you, or that something is safe and reliable. And as you see this, you say, well, they're elected officials or it's government. How can they harm you? Well, from how it impacts your life every day to how it impacts your fiscal status in life to how it impacts the potential for future growth for you and your children and generations to come. That's a harm to you when government doesn't do things that's beneficial to you. That's why people don't trust government. It also matters to be, well, trustworthy, to tell the truth, to know the things that you're saying, be they good or bad, are being said honestly. Last year, the county chair actually made a comment about how the people don't trust them. And they were right then, and they're right yet still. That's why it needs to be worked on going forward. That's why this year should be a high level of effort by our elected officials to reestablish trust. Now, if the new chair wants to do this, there's certain things that can be done. One, tell the hard truth, even if it hurts. Now, I have to tell you, I have seen the current chairwoman in the past tell the hard truth and been slammed in the media for it. She needs to stick with that. Telling the hard truth won't guarantee her reelection, but it's the truth and it's the right thing to do. Another way for them to build trust is for them to do actual deep dives. Think about this. Our very well paid county commissioners sometimes have shown that they don't bother to read the ordinance. They don't bother to read the statutes. They don't bother to read the very expensive reports from the consultants that they paid for. This in the past has led to bad governance where, well, blanket regulation has been put down instead of using the good tools in the toolbox to create a better vision and a better pathway forward for this county to make sure there's a balance between proper growth, protecting our community and our history, and also growing the economy. But if you don't bother to read the ordinances or the statutes or case law or anything like that, or especially the reports that come in from the consultants, how are we going to trust you? And you get paid really well to do it. So take the time, take the effort, read the pages, stay up late at night. That's the kind of things that people want to see from our elected officials. That will help build trust and actually establish this trust by not debating the emotions or the feelings on things, but the facts, by discussing the specifics of the ordinance or the statute, or even especially discussing the details that you find within the reports that we're paying for. Because what has seemed to happen in the past, and not by everybody, but for the majority, they only seem to discuss what is before them and said by the consultant at the podium, not the detail of the study. This can be seen in the work for the impact fees, the follow-up that covered the impact fees over mobility fees, the road repaving issues and the challenge of the 1 cent sales tax, the lack of DOGE and government's poor response to hurricanes when it happened, the Pirates Cove issue, the issue around Highway 491 and getting state money, and other things. It seemed like it was discussed at just the top level, like nobody had bothered to read or do deep dives on all these things. If you want trust, you have to show people you care enough about them and about the issues to be able to debate and discuss on the dais at such a level that you can get down to the brass taxes of why you're doing it, how to do it, and the potential future impact of the decisions you make. But that's what we often fail to see. And this is, again, one of the reasons that people don't have a lot of trust in their elected officials. We also saw our elected officials, and have continued to for years, turn to the bureaucrats and basically said, well, here's the issue, give us options. And then they debate which option, not the long-term outcome of that option. And this is basically ceding your power as an elected official to unelected bureaucrats, many of which have not been long-term Citrus County citizens. Some have a history of intentionally impacting local communities to include individuals and businesses. And that's what happens when elected officials cede their power, cede their authority to bureaucrats. Yes, the bureaucrats are a necessary evil, and more often than not, they are just there to do a job and please the county commissioners. And that's why we get a lot of what we get. Basically, though, staff is the functionary of the board. They are there to make successful the decisions and the guidance from the elected board. But that's not what we have had over the years. And the new chair knows what good leadership is and has the ability to right the ship, especially at an important time when we're talking about the comp plan. So the comp plan that's coming down should have prioritized the weakest aspect first and foremost for this county. That's our economy. But if you look at the effort, it's good that they want citizens involved, but they should have established as a priority the fixing of Citrus County's economy, the poor jobs, the poor opportunities to create the incentive to bring businesses with good paying jobs here, to increase the tax base that would develop the availability of tax income from a profitable business to provide the services that we need for this county. But that was not a directive from the leadership to make this a priority. When you look at it, yes, housing and growth and development and conservation and infrastructure all needs to be covered in the comp plan. But the elected officials can prioritize what the key goal of the comp plan is, such as fixing our broken economy. If you're going to say that the money from the rollover that we have every year is going to diminish by 2030, then shouldn't the economy be a priority for Citrus County? And if it's not, explain why it's not. Another area of trust is, well, communications. You see, the county commission has a chair. The chair predominantly speaks in a uniform voice for all the commissioners. Basically, they make a vote and the chair comes out and speaks on why. But prior to that vote, or even after sometimes, there could be the ability to build trust by our elected officials speaking openly and honestly. Now, they'll tell you, I can't tell people how I'm going to vote because of the Sunshine Law. No, that's not true. That's not true at all. There are a number of attorney general opinions on the Sunshine Law that basically says that if you say publicly how you're going to vote, if you write an article publicly about how you're going to vote, if you post on your social media, not the government's, on how you're going to vote, and you do not engage in a interaction, an exchange with another member, then you're not in violation of the Sunshine Law. I know, with all the work I did with letters to editor and all the radio and everything that I did, if that was true and I would have been in violation, I guarantee you the government would have came after me. But they can do this. There's even case law that's specific to Florida that allows them to have open discussion in the public about how they're going to vote, either for or against, and why. So as an example, let's say they want to come down and vote in favor of a change at the interchange management area, and one person is for something and one person is against something. As long as they don't direct that public input to, well, Commissioner X needs to know I'm against that, they're fine. If they say I'm against that or I'm for that and here's why, that is completely legal. But nobody knows how you feel. Nobody knows why you think what you think. This would help build trust if we understood the thinking and the reasoning of why you make the decisions you make. You see, trust sometimes is about, well, telling people this is the hard truth and this is why. And again, you have staff that will tell you incorrectly that you may be in violation of the Sunshine Law. They never tell you how you can do it without being in violation of Sunshine Law. They simply give you instructions on how you may be in violation of the Sunshine Law. This is how bureaucrats control elected officials and why we have no idea until they get up to the dais and speak for mere minutes on some issues, every once in a while, an extended period of time. But we should know clearly and concisely as much as is reasonable, why our elected officials think the decision they're making is the best decision. It's legal, they can do it, and again, if they want to build trust, this is another tool in the toolbox of building trust in the year 2026. Another issue that we need to deal with is accountability. You see, we get elected officials who will do things and nobody holds them accountable. My favorite is the example of the impact fee issue that they worked on last year. So from May of last year until I believe around October, they were doing public outreach and stuff like that in reference to impact fees. And that being guided by the county commission should have been cause for the county commission themselves to do in-depth research. So as an example, Commissioner Davis specifically chose not to do any research on impact fees, instead waiting for the consultant and depending on what they said until the day of the impact fee either getting approved or disapproved. But that's when she found the statute that covered impact fees. And here's why that's important, because impact fees can be used to both protect our rural community and to incentivize infill, which would have ensured proper growth in our county. But none of that was discussed by any of the county commissioners about how to use the tool. One county commissioner doesn't even bother to read the statute on the issue that they're working on. How do we hold them accountable? Well, obviously they weren't breaking a law. And so we know that nobody there is going to hold them accountable, and there's no judicial way to hold them accountable. The media picks winners and losers, and otherwise they would have wrote stories about how our county commission failed to even to bother to read the statutes about impact fees before making decisions about impact fees. So it's reliant on us, you, me, and others, to start holding them accountable. But here's a problem. Something like that will be done. People like me will mention something about it. There'll be 15 minutes of irritation, and then it goes away. And then people say, well, they're held accountable at the ballot box. No, people absolutely forget things at the ballot box, unless, of course, the media wants you to remember. And, of course, the media has their chosen leaders that they want to support. We know for a fact that the media intentionally ignores things like this. So it's up to you and I. And how do we do that? Well, first and foremost, there's people like me and others who are digging into these things and presenting it to you so you can hold them accountable. But also, you can put on the pressure of asking for public records of their text messages, asking for public records of their internet search to see if they have or haven't done any research whatsoever on their computer. You can ask for these things, and then you can share that information, and then you can write articles to the Chronicle. Or you can actually send them emails and inquire why they didn't bother to do it. And then come election time, people will have it elevated enough to where they will have to answer it. But even more so, we can use the example of the Crystal River City Councilwoman who decided to do things. And when public records requests for text messages and emails came out, that councilwoman instead chose to resign. Was there something there? We don't know. But that was public accountability and public pressure that drove an elected official out of office. Now, that person will claim it's for other reasons, but everybody in this county is talking, and we all know it's because people who are doing public records requests put on so much pressure, i.e. accountability, that it drove that person basically out of office. And that's why it's our job as citizens to hold the elected officials accountable. Stop looking to the governor. Stop looking to other elected officials. We are the ones who are supposed to be holding them accountable. That's why I do these videos. And let me tell you, there's others who are working on this vigorously as well, with the end goal of making sure the government is the best run government possible. You should support them. So yes, like, share their comments, share their articles, same with my videos, and help keep our elected officials accountable. Because I can tell you, I have people who are regularly coming up talking about how some of us are really starting to do the job of true accountability. But we can't do that without your help. You know, I want to cover an article. Now, the article was about SB 180. And the way he wrote this article was as if Tallahassee was taking authority away from the county and city governments. talked about how form-based codes in Crystal River may not be able to move forward because of this. Well, SB 180 is a piece of legislation that says after a disaster, and in Florida, those are predominantly hurricane-caused disasters, but after a disaster, that the county or city cannot make a change to their zoning and codes. Now, why is that? Well, first and foremost, after a disaster, the key goal of government should be one thing: to get you back in your house. And any delay, be it a couple of days to a week, or as with the last hurricane, months and months, any delays is an impact to the lives of the people of the county. The very same lives that the government is supposed to be working to ensure is least impacted. But change in government absolutely impacts it. When you increase government regulations, you are thereby forcing additional work on the permitting process. Additional work slows down the permitting process. Additional regulation is burdensome for businesses to adhere to in a timely manner. And if you're doing it during the time of a hurricane, it's definitely detrimental. Now, Bree brought up the form-based codes and how Crystal River might have a problem because they want to do that. And first and foremost, I think form-based codes are wonderful. It's an opportunity to think differently about development, combining businesses and residential to make a better community. But here's where there's a presumption that form-based code has to be more restrictive and more stringent. And because of that, this law would impact them. You know what he didn't cover? That form-based codes can actually be less restrictive. And if the change in code is less restrictive, more permissive, the reducing of barriers can be done without any impact to the change of codes. It's only when you import higher restrictions. So the truth is, well, the truth. Form-based code in Crystal River would not be impacted by SB 180 if the form-based code is less restrictive going forward during the time of a hurricane or recovery from a hurricane. But think about it. A hurricane didn't hit last year. We didn't have a disaster. So that means that the county or the cities were able to change their policies and not be impacted by this bill at all. Zero. But in the end, this presumption that Tallahassee somehow was taking away power from our local government? No, not at all. SB 180, and it's not a perfect law, and there is no perfect law. But SB 180 was about one thing: empowering the individuals to get through the permitting process to be able to get back in their homes after a disaster. And since we know for a fact that there were literally people taking well over a year to get back in their home because of our regulatory burden here in Citrus County, it's good that the state did this. Yes, it needs some tweaks, maybe change the timelines. But in general, for him to come out and support more restrictive regulation after the impact of a disaster shows you how the media here in Citrus County, the Chronicle, is biased in favor of a more controlling government. Again, it's always about more regulation, more control, less individual, and less freedom. And when you have the media spouting this drivel, you understand why they get away with it. Yes, I know my words are harsh. And I would rather be able to do these videos that pat the elected officials on the back for all the good things they're doing in this county, to move the needle forward for everybody, to work on our economy, protect our growth so it happens in the right areas in the right way, to ensure rules are equal, and that we do all we can to develop a long-term plan for this county. The new chairwoman is a very bright woman. She, of all the meetings I've watched, has probably done the most research on policy coming forward and can articulate very well a lot of why she thinks what she thinks. I just hope that she'll take this opportunity as chair, guide her peers to being better county commissioners. Last year, there was an article that talked about the aspect of not having such disagreements on the board. We need a board that actually discusses things. We need elected officials, commissioners, who regularly, routinely explain why they believe in what they believe in, what their vision is, what their goals are, what the outcome is going to be. 2026 is predominantly going to affect the long-term future of Citrus County, from impact fees or mobility fees to the growth of our infrastructure, to our comp plan, to our future land use map, to our zoning, to our permitting department. It all is going to really be heavily impacted here in 2026. If there was ever a time for citizens to truly be involved, to truly be engaged, to make sure our elected officials are truly representatives of our community, and to make sure the decisions that they make are focusing first on the individuals, second on businesses, and third on the community as a whole, then we're going to have a better community. We're going to have a better county. But if they continue to do like they've been doing, where they put principles over practice, meaning that, well, they want to protect, as an example, the tree canopy, but you can have no irreparable harm as long as you get permission by government. But if you cut the trees down by your own, it's irreparable harm, and well, you have to pay a huge fine. That is like the epitome. They closed out the year with the worst possible example of how government in the past has an attitude of principles of protecting the canopy, and then failed practice of giving some latitude, but not the citizens. So 2026 has great opportunity for Citrus County. The question is, will they listen? You decide.